You're listening to the Outfitter Pros podcast, the show for outdoor enthusiasts by outdoor enthusiasts. On the show, we speak with outfitter owners and outdoor professionals across North America and hear their stories of turning their passion into a profession. Whether you've been in the outdoor industry for years, are thinking of pursuing your own passion as a profession, or simply want to discover new outfitters for your next adventure, this is the show for you. Daniel Bowman, welcome to the Outfitter Pros podcast with being our inaugural guest. I don't even know if I can use that word inaugural. Does that make sense in this context?
I don't know, but I'm honored either way. So yeah, no, it's super exciting. I'm glad to be here. So lots of fun.
Yeah, man. Well, let's just dive in and talk about you and talk about, man, who is Daniel Bowman? What is Bowman Fly Fishing? Let's tell your story, man. So you're in North Georgia, right? And what's the name of the town that you kind of operate out of?
So that's always a tough one. We get that one a lot because we don't have a shop, we don't have a lodge, anything like that. Technically, where I'm out of is Cleveland, Georgia, but we do a lot around Dahlonega. That's a tough one right there. That always trips a lot of people up. We do a lot around Dahlonega, and then a lot up in the Blue Ridge area too. So basically, our guys are from all over and kind of go all over. We kind of make a point of chasing after wherever the fishing's going to be best is kind of where we end up heading. So
yeah, I love it, man. I was trying to pronounce Dahlonega. I was like Dahlonega. I don't know how to say this. So now you've given me some proper enunciation of that. Fun fact. So I'm in Northeast Tennessee, in what we call the Tri-Cities area. And when we were trying to get together and we were just kind of talking, like, Daniel's actually from my hometown that I live in, which is kind of a small world, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I was born right there in Kingsport, Tennessee. So yeah, all of my family is still really both sides, mom and dad's side, are all from Kingsport through going over into the Virginia side, Johnson City, Boones Creek, Irwin, all right through there. So yeah, we get up there a lot. You know, it's kind of hard to all of the southeastern trout crowd always gives me a hard time. They're like, man, how did you end up like moving away from East Tennessee and the rivers like the Holston and the Watauga to go down to North Georgia, and then you ended up doing a fly fishing guide service down there? And we moved when I was very young. I ended up growing up around North Georgia and in some of the North Carolina areas, so that's kind of always been home to me. But I definitely still get up to fish the Holston and the Watauga quite a bit. So I spend a lot of time up there, especially in the summer. So
very cool. Now, when did you move from here to North Georgia?
I mean, I was young. I mean, it was like very early on. I mean, I was in elementary school in Georgia. So, basically all of my ties to East Tennessee have always been coming up, whenever we had breaks off school. My grandfather's got a cattle farm up there. So it was always going up and getting to run around the farm a little bit, being able to do some of that kind of stuff. So that was always where we got to go up to play, where I learned how to hunt, where I learned how to fish, all that stuff. All my earliest memories of anything related to the outdoors are all situated in East Tennessee for sure. So,
I mean, what kind of things, like, what was your experience growing up as far as like your exposure to the outdoors, whether that was in Georgia or up here in East Tennessee?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when I was really young, my dad, I mean, like young, my dad was real big into all the tournament bass fishing, everything. So, it was, he was all into, every weekend and during the week on the tournament trails, wherever it would be around us in Georgia, because we were living in Georgia at this time. So he fished a lot around us down here, around these lakes, but would also spend a lot of time still going back up to Tennessee, over to Alabama, whatever it is, doing a lot of these tournaments. So I grew up with that. And at the same time too, he was a big hunter, big deer hunter, mainly is what we did a lot of around Georgia and Tennessee as well. But he actually, I guess I've been like second or third grade when this happened, but he was actually going up in a climbing stand, and one of the two-part, normal climbing stand, was going up a tree, and it had been raining that morning. And this was a tree that I guess was real slick, didn't have a lot of bark on it. And that bottom platform of the climbing stand slipped and he fell through the top one. And when he did, his foot got caught. and ended up hurting his neck real bad when this
Oh,
happened.
man.
So luckily all they ended up having to do, and all he kind of ended up with was having to go get some screws and a plate put in. And, it was definitely a pretty major surgery, but, he had all of his mobility and everything like that. They did tell him though, that at least, for the foreseeable future, he wasn't going to be able to ride in bass boats again because of the chop of
Oh,
running across wake on plane, going through
yeah.
and kind of like that jarring motion. So he kind of got out of bass fishing a little bit more at that time. Sold his boat, sold a lot of his equipment, and kind of went full bore deer hunting, even though that's what kind of got him, and so I guess it was until I could drive, pretty much it was hunting for us. We did a lot of hunting and fishing. We did kind of going up when we would go and see my folks or go run around Tennessee in the farm pond or stuff like that. I guess, yeah, fishing for me never really kind of came back to the forefront of what I like to do. It was, hunting and playing baseball. Honestly, played a lot of baseball too. That's kind of life until I got my own wheels and start doing my own thing. So
Yeah. The baseball motions carried over there, right? Like
yeah,
carried over pretty
yeah,
well.
yeah, absolutely. No, that's what I've got, a shoulder right now from who knows what, and it's always good rowing a boat. After a little while, I can be like, I'm done too many pitches, what it is, so always go back to that. But no, yeah, so it carried over. And then, about the time I turned 16, I guess it was a little before that. I had a grandfather that was into fly fishing. It was on my mom's side, and he gave me all of his, he kind of got older and wasn't able to fish anymore, and gave me all of his equipment. And never really, he taught me a little bit about how to cast, but never really, he kind of more like here you go, like figure it out kind of thing, and started catching like bass and brim. And then the time that it really clicked for me is and this is backing up a little bit, this is when I was 13. For my 13th birthday, my parents got me and one of my friends a half-day float trip down the Chattahoochee River. So I remember like showing up, we're like in, whatever, Johns Creek right there. We show up at the Abbott's, Bridge boat ramp right there to go get in. And the guy I'm friends with today, John McCloskey, who ended up taking us out. And so we get in the boat with John. And I just remember that day we caught a bunch of fish. And I remember kind of like getting out there and like 30 minutes in being like, what, I didn't even consider this as like an option for a job. This is this guy's job. Like, I want to do this when I grow up, So like, I always blame it, tell my parents like that's, you guys started that. So, it's your fault really, because, I remember going on that first one. I was like, this is what I want to do when I grow up. So,
and you were a teenager. How old were you?
Oh yeah, I was 13.
13. Yeah. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, no, it was cool. And from there, I just got more and more into it, and I fished a lot through high school. And then, kind of as soon as I could, I was headed to, the original plan was go to App State to go study like writing and journalism. Wanted to be a writer, really wanted to do be an outdoor writer. It's kind of what I wanted to do.
Good fly fishing in Boone too.
Yeah, exactly. And Boone wasn't a bad place to hang out. Yeah. I thought, I could go to school and then I could guide in the summers and kind of work that deal. Yeah. But then kind of like the expense of out-of-state tuition at App State combined with the reality of like, I'm going to be getting a degree in writing and journalism, which is not known for being the most lucrative career right out of the gate, So
sure.
I ended up kind of deciding to take like a gap year, ended up going and guiding for a place in Alaska. And that was the start of it. So, I've been guiding ever since. So,
yeah, man, there's stuff in Alaska that'll eat you while you're fly fishing too, though, man.
Yeah. There's a couple that tried. So yeah. I had two pretty good ones, two pretty good ones that, I think maybe somebody who was like born and raised up there might have been like, whatever, you got false charged by a grizzly. But for a guy from Georgia that's used to like, bears that look like really big dogs, to go up there and have like an 800-pound grizzly bear run up on you, and stop about 5 feet away and start doing all this stuff, like that left a lasting, impact on me. So.
As it should.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So man, tell me about Alaska. Like, what was, and taking that gap year and kind of stepping into what you actually wanted to pursue later on, like, And what was that year like for you?
Yeah, so it was really neat because I showed up there, and a lot of the pretty much all the guys that I ended up working with were pretty seasoned guides. And I'm 18, I'm straight out of high school. I'd done like a little bit of guiding around North Georgia, like some kind of guiding like during school, and just thought that, hey, I want to be a guide. And I can remember like getting there, and the place I worked for, it was on the Nushagak River. I get into a little bit more about what the camp was like, but like it was pretty remote, and before I could get picked up to actually get driven to where like the plane was or where we kind of based out of, I had to spend the night at a bed and breakfast. I remember that morning when the guys were coming to pick me up, there was a whole crew that was going to be up there. They had all piled into this van to come pick me as the last one to get picked up. And they came to pick me up, and I was sitting on the steps of the bed and breakfast, and I think I was reading Into the Wild. It's either Into the Wild or I was reading like Walden. I was reading some Thoreau or Emerson. So I'm like getting ready for my grand like Alaskan adventure, And these guys show up, they get out, and one of them was a retired Army Ranger. A couple of them had been guys that had been up there in Alaska before, all pretty burly, big bearded guys, tough looking dudes in their, late 20s, early 30s. And they come and they look at me and they see me sitting on the steps, and I just kind of see everybody's heads drop, and they just go, golly, taking care of a kid this year, So I ended up kind of like running around with them, and it was great because I was the only one, because I had grown up after my dad got out of bass fishing. I wanted to get into bass fishing, and he wasn't going to be buying us boats. So I had to, I kind of horse traded old bass boats and stuff. So I grew up working on outboards, and I ended up kind of being the camp mechanic. So
Nice.
whenever anybody had an issue with their boat, they really liked me, So it worked out that like a lot of these guys that I worked with, even that first year, ended up being kind of lifelong friends. But it was neat. There a lot of the guys that were there were either from like Ohio or northern Michigan. Especially I ended up doing a second season out there. That second season, a lot of the guys are from northern Michigan, and they ran around with like a really cool crew up there. They two of them fished a lot with the guy Phil Croft and Tommy Lynch. Up there around some of the different kinds of stuff. They were more over kind of like the middle of the Mint, I guess, a little bit, kind of like right there around like Mackinac in that area, up in middle northern Michigan, the Lower Peninsula. But we're like part of a real cool fishy crew that I had never really been exposed to before. So I kind of got indoctrinated to the world of the fly fishing like vocation, I guess you could say, this kind of space that everybody sort of lives in, where it's not very big. Everybody kind of knows everybody, and it was a neat introduction to it for sure. Especially we got out there, and the guy I worked for up there's a guy named Dave Egdorf. His daughter Camille works for Yellow Dog out of Bozeman. Nice. Does a lot of the travel and that kind of stuff. So that was cool too, because she was kind of on her way at that point to, she was kind of becoming that fly fishing personality a little bit. Got to see a little bit of that travel side, that international travel side, get exposed to maybe a little bit more of that back end side of it that you see working for a lodge, especially like a destination lodge that maybe you'd miss, like just guiding around here locally, guiding at one place, kind of within driving distance of people, especially. So that was cool. It was neat to see that side of it. Neat to kind of guide in that way too, to be exposed to, streamer fishing. I hadn't done a lot of big streamer fishing. I learned a lot about that from guys who really knew it really well. Sinking lines, anything that wasn't like a 5-weight, the 6-weight. So got to understand some of that stuff. Also got to understand a lot about spay fishing too, which was about as foreign to me as anything could be, being from North Georgia, so that was a lot of fun. But yeah, really enjoyed it. Learned a lot that first year for sure.
Man, that's awesome. You and I are so similar. Like I was 19 when I moved away from Northeast Tennessee to Colorado, and I was reading Thoreau. I was reading all that stuff. Into the Wild was a big motivation and inspiration for me as well. And I think that's the cool thing, is that there's so many people out there, and especially you and I are about the same age, or close enough. How old are you? I forgot to ask.
I'm 25.
25. So I'm 9 years older. We're still 24, 25, 34. It's same age basically.
Yeah.
Right?
You've got young kids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I say like we're in the same stage of life, so
Yep.
that same kind of, yeah,
for sure.
that's why I end up
For
at.
sure.
So yeah.
But man, it's just like that headspace that, the Into the Wild kind of created for me was like that idea of just like pursuing adventure, man, pursuing freedom and adventure and like living this life that brought fulfillment and brought joy of not being tied down to one space or just being able to do things that I enjoy and like make a living from it. Right. So man, that's super cool that you shared that. Cause I'm right there with you, man. That was a big factor for me.
No. Yeah.
So like coming home from Alaska, you were out there for 2 seasons?
Yeah, I was out there for 2 seasons. I came back in between both, but yeah,
Sure.
I ended up doing 2 seasons out there. So
Sure. So when you come back from this wild Alaskan experience and you come back to North Georgia, like, man, what was that like transitioning from that kind of like that lifestyle back into home and familiarity and what you were used to?
yeah, it's tough, especially that first year because I got back home and I'm 19 years old and everybody's like kind of getting together and comparing notes on like their freshman year of college, and meanwhile I'm kind of back and I'm like, I've learned like a lot of lessons that like maybe I shouldn't have learned at like 18 or 19 years old from these like guys that had kind of been through it all up there, and then kind of in just a totally different culture, a different life, and then so that was tough because I found that my crowd that I started running with, guys that I related to and started hanging out with, kind of got a little bit older than maybe myself, so fell back in. Interestingly, I also met my wife in between the first and second years of Alaska, so came back, met her. She's 4 years older than me and had just kind of gotten out of college and was kind of done with that stage of her life, which is kind of where I ended up sort of finding myself too. It's like hard to relate to everybody talking about school and looking forward to their sophomore years. So, the other interesting thing was kind of coming back in like, the fly fishing community in North Georgia was very young at that point. It's only in the past couple of years that I would say that we're really seeing like this really big widespread community of fly fishermen in Georgia specifically. I feel like maybe it's a little bit older, definitely a little bit older in East Tennessee for sure. And then North Carolina, it's a little bit older as well. It's kind of spread its way south. So I came back and there was like, I've always been very close with the guys at a shop down towards Atlanta from us, Alpharetta Outfitters. So I kind of had my fly fishing kind of industry friends that I hung around there a lot with. And I actually ended up kind of working in the shop a little bit, spending a lot of time around there. Excuse me, just because it allowed me to spend some time around that fly fishing space. But I kind of wanted to find that community, like a lot of those guys in Northern Michigan had talked about, that they had up there with guides and that same kind of fishing stories that I'd heard. I'd kind of applied that to North Georgia and was like, man, like I want to go home and figure out ways to like chase down these like mystical big browns. And all I heard about was like a lot of these like lake run browns, lake run fish, hecks, some nocturnal fish and stuff, and I'm like, man, I want to go home and figure that out. And it was tough when you get back, because it's like all of a sudden I got back and North Georgia's a lot different than fishing in Northern Michigan, and for a variety of reasons. So like that was kind of tough. I would say like that first year coming back, it was kind of a lot of just figuring out. I knew I was going to go back. I'd already committed going back that second year up there in Alaska. So it was kind of like coming back and spinning my wheels a little bit, as far as like I spent a lot of time in the shop trying to figure out about, hey, would I actually be able to guide around here during the spring or not? What would that look like? We'd started doing a little bit of guiding through the fly shop at that point. But not really much. There's a couple outfitters that were going up here at that point, but maybe 3 or 4 of them, I guess, all running about a handful of guides. So basically just kind of hanging out, waiting to get back up there, kind of trying to stay in touch with guys, ran around, visited everybody, and did all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it was good, but it was definitely kind of like a shock to not be in the same world of fly fishing as I was before. So
Sure. So man, like, so you moved up there after when you should have been going into your second year of college, right? You're
mhm.
18, 19 years old, man, and you're 25 now. So man, that's 5, 6 years ago. When did you kind of transition from that experience into saying, you know what, I can do this outfitter thing. Like I can do this on my own.
Yeah. So I've always been like very entrepreneurially inclined. I've always, if it wasn't fly fishing, I'd have probably been started some other kind of business. I
Yeah.
just, luckily, I'm fortunate enough to be able to do it and like pursue a passion. But for me, it was after that second year, I got back and I worked for another outfitter for a year. And it was like probably like 6 or 8 months into that outfitter, I kind of like saw the writing on the wall. It was like, hey, if I'm going to do this, especially if I want to do this long term, I'm definitely going to do this for myself. I want to start an outfit doing it because I don't get me wrong, I love the guiding side of it, but I also really enjoy the business side of it too.
Mm,
I enjoy the problem solving that comes with that and a lot of the challenges that come with that. So that's just as much of a passion to me as fly fishing has always been. So I knew pretty quick. So I guess I would have been 20, maybe 21, about to turn 21 probably when I started Bowman fly fishing. And now when I
wow.
started Bowman fly fishing, it was just me. I was like, all right, I'm just going to find a way to market myself and be able to book my own trips. And I just want to keep my calendar busy. I think at the time I didn't really have any grand visions of like, oh, I'm going to start an outfitter.
Yeah.
So I was just going to do it. I was just going to guide.
Yeah. Just try to make a living. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. So man, so you start Bowman fly fishing 20, 21 years old, and with this grand vision of, man, being able to do this and it actually provide for you, for whatever family that would come after that, right? But you met your wife. So were you married at the time when you started it, or were you still dating?
No, we were married at the time. So when we
Nice.
got married, I was actually working for another outfitter at the time, and my wife was a teacher. So yeah, we got married, and hey, we were joking about that actually not too long ago. It's like that whole first year, I was probably more of like an expense than like a contributing like household income. So like
Sure.
there was boats and all that kind of stuff, that were bought that first year, especially like starting it on my own, because that's the hard part of it is like, all right, when you decide like, okay, I'm gonna guide now, there's not like okay, turn on the faucet of trips coming in, you got to get out there a little bit. So I
Yeah.
was fortunate that I did that. No kids, just married, living in like a 800 square foot house in the mountains, just the two of us. It was a pretty great time in life to be able to just kind of like figure it out, and just go for it. So
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So like that initial stage was, okay, man, we're starting this business and got a boat, got gear, like trying to figure out how to get clients coming in. Like, man, did you find any kind of trials in that initial period? Like, what were some of the tough spots for you?
yeah, I would say probably one of there's been a couple good ones. One of the most interesting ones that I didn't see coming was when I'd started. So if you remember, like all of my reference I had for guiding outside of Alaska was talking to these guys from Northern Michigan. And there's one guy in particular that I really like, thought a lot of as far as like his guiding and the way that he talked about fishing, all that kind of stuff. This guy named Zach Genna, from up there. And Zach was kind of like this. We always called him like the critter. He's just kind of like one of these guys that like you might see him for a little while, but then like you won't be able to get him on the phone for like 3 weeks because he's like living in the back of his truck in the woods grouse hunting, and fishing by night. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. It's like just this guy that just like was off the grid and did nothing but just like hunt and fish, and just was kind of like this guy that would guide you, just enough to maybe get by, but he was just really living out fishing and hunting and doing that kind of stuff. I just thought that was so cool. And that's kind of what I started off doing when I started Bowman fly fishing. I was like, this is my way to like be that guy where I'm just in the woods hunting and fishing and then just hanging out all the time. And then like, I mean, within the first year, it all of a sudden got to the point where like I was doing like well over 200 days, you know, and needed help, needed like a second guide, needed somebody around to help me, and wasn't like ready for that. And I honestly was a little bummed because I was like, man, what happened to like this idea of like just being able to be this guy, you know, just this guy, this critter that could just kind of like fish and do his thing and be in the woods and, you know, just kind of be that guy. And instead I was like having to like manage calendars and, you know, send invoices and do that kind of do like the business side of things, you know. So that was a struggle for me, you know, both like being organized to do all that kind of stuff, but also mentally, you know, because like that wasn't kind of what I had pictured. I had pictured it just kind of solo. And then that kind of happened a little bit quicker, which is great, you know, like it was definitely a blessing for sure, but it was, it was something I don't think I saw coming. And honestly, I was a little bummed about it at first. So, you
Yeah.
know, but that was one of the big ones. I would say like the other one would be just kind of realizing like with myself, how how tough it is for me to stay organized on excuse me, the calendar sense and like the uh like just kind of like the day-to-day functions of guiding, you know, as far as like keeping stuff straight. The second you commit to something, it goes on the calendar so that you don't end up double booking yourself. Like just those kind of lessons. I learned a few of those the hard way, and especially like guiding for a couple guys along the way. I know I like look back on myself, like in maybe some of the situations that I was in or put the other outfitters in when I was like learning to guide. It's like, you know, like I probably would have like had some words with me too along the way as far as like learning like, hey, you know, you got to manage your calendar better, you know, you got to do this better or whatever. Like some of those lessons are just kind of hard to learn sometimes, especially when you're not particularly like naturally inclined for that level of like organization of your day to day, you know.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, it took a lot of work to get there.
Yeah. And man, I think that's the interesting thing is like, I think the people like you and I and the people that are kind of in this space in the outdoor industry is like, man, we love being outdoors. Like we want to be that person that just spends our time outside. But then as soon as we start taking this passion and twisting it towards a profession, we don't think about the admin side of things, the business side of things. And man, you said it was challenging because you're like, yeah, that wasn't necessarily like who I thought I was going to be as I was this business owner. Right. But man, I think there's so many
Right.
people out there that are kind of in that same boat that think, oh man, I just get to fish or hunt or do this activity that I love all of the time. But they quickly, what they don't understand is, well, no, you got a lot of other things to do. When we started our rafting outfitter, I was like, man, I'm just gonna get to guide all the time. No, I was the photographer, I was the bus driver, I was the secretary. Like I did all of these
Mhm.
other things, and it was like I didn't get to spend nearly as much time on the water as I wanted to. But it was helping everything else run and get to the point where, you know, that we dreamed what it could be. And so, man, I don't think you're alone in that. I think that's a big struggle for a lot of people. And so, man, as you're coming through this season, you're experiencing these things, a lot of hard learned lessons, which I think are actually, man, the ones that stick out the most, right? Is like you had to experience the loss, or you had to experience the hard thing in order for it to truly like actually make sense and to really change you. So as you move forward, so man, coming into that, and so within the first year, 200 trips, you had to hire your first guide in your first year. That's crazy. Like that's pretty awesome. Like what kind of things were you doing to get 200 trips? Like how did you even get to that space?
Yeah. So for me, it was honestly like the first thing that I did was I invested a lot of time and I invested money in a website and like a decent website. And that was something new because there's a couple other guys with websites, but there's like two other guys with like decent websites. So I created a website. I knew something about SEO and marketing, and I decided that I wasn't just going to create a page to be able to like put on my business card, but I was going to put something that like I could
Right.
drive traffic to, you
Yeah.
know. And that was another thing. Like I remember like going through and doing those kind of like initially when I was creating that first site, kind of looking at you know how stuff was ranking on Google and, maybe some of my other like competitors at the time and what all was around. And it was just like, man, it was start with, it was pretty easy pickings, because there just wasn't much out there, I think like Blue Ridge Fly Fishing was around at that point. And they did a really good job there for a while of doing guide trips and how they kind of commanded the market a little bit around that. So they did a good job. And then there was like one of the guy I used to work for, a guy reeling in guide service, and then maybe one other one that had that were doing a good job and still are, like James Bradley at Reeling In. He's still around. He still does a lot of trips. So those guys were around, but aside from that, it was all just like, that one guy with a Facebook page kind of thing, so it was it really came from that, and I guess like also me being around the fly shop in Alpharetta, I had met a lot of people, I mean, even still to this day, like, well over half of our client base is North Atlanta. So, we had a lot of people that I met that were still coming up to fish, wanted to fish out of North Atlanta through there. And I just knew a lot of people. So like ended up when I started doing my own thing, I just had a lot of people that came up, and it kind of grew organically, but definitely jumping in and spending that initial investment on a website, and kind of understanding maybe the way that like search engines work and trying to market a little bit was the big part of it, because a lot of times as outdoor outfitters or outdoor industry people, the focus is all on like, hey, I'm going to provide the highest quality experience possible. I'm going to do what I really think is fun. And because I do that, people are naturally going to want to come fish with me more, or come like you guys with rafting. It's like, man, we've got some great guides. We do great trips. It's a lot of fun. Like people are going to naturally just kind of be drawn to us because of how much fun it is and how great we are. And the reality is, you can be the best one out there, but if people don't know, they don't know, so, that's the hard part with it. So,
yeah, no, dude, I think that's super insightful for sure. And especially being a younger outfitter owner. And I think as I look and I talk to outfitters even across the country, is like, man, kind of the generation before us, the older generation, that want to provide that excellent outdoor service and do all of the outdoor things. There's like this aversion. I don't know if aversion would be the correct word or not, but this kind of this hold back to lean into technology, right? It's just not natural. It's not how we're wired. Like we're wired to catch fish and to hunt and to be outside doing adventurous things. But no, that's super insightful, I think, of you. So, man, moving on, like got your guide, I think you're 5 years into your business now, right? You started in 2017, maybe. Am I off on
yeah,
that?
let's say that. Yeah, like 2016 is probably when about 2017, 2016, somewhere in there. So like 5-6 years, something like that. It's kind of hard to put an actual start date on it. So,
Sure. Yeah. So
yeah.
man, like where are you today? Like how's your business grown since then?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So no, it's continued growing. The market around us, like everybody, we've got younger guys, we've got new guys that have come in to the space in North Georgia, and like that first 2 years of like pretty easy instant success that we had has definitely like gotten to where like now like the competition's gotten better, which just kind of makes everybody better. Everybody's just started doing a little bit better job, so that has changed. But now, we've gone from me and one other guy here there to like last year, we ended up with a roster of 14 guides, so was really fun. Now 14, so with us, it's a little bit different. And in North Georgia, it's a lot different from like a lot of other guide areas and guide cultures and how I'll do it. We don't make anybody be exclusive with us in Georgia. There is no outfitter license or anything like that. Everybody's just kind of all in agreement. You have an outfitter and guides work under you. And, my biggest thing is in our area, the more guys that we can have around who are able to guide full time and make a living at it, the better it is for everybody, because then we just have a better pool of guides to all be able to kind of pull from for trips. But we've got there's about four of us that are pretty much full time, like looking at around like 200 days a year, something like that. One of them does go and spend a little bit of time out west and then comes back. So, but the first guy that I hired is guy Jason Tannehill. Jason's still, riding strong with us. His wife actually works for us now. She's kind of like our admin, office. So if you called like the Bowman Fly Fishing phone number, she answers. So we've got her now, and then we've got Kyle. He came on with us not too long after Jason. We met him on the water. He's been with us for several years now as well. And then Trey Wall, he goes out there to Pinedale, spends some time in Pinedale, comes back, guides for us here. He's a Blairsville guy, so he's up in the mountains too. So now we've got a good crew, and then we have a bunch of other guys that kind of jump in and help us out here or there with varying degrees. It's pretty seasonal, a lot of the stuff. Especially a lot of the wade water, a lot of the private water type stuff shuts down in the summer for us. So we can kind of get after it pretty hot and heavy during like March, April, May, beginning of June. July is pretty much float trip time, striper time, kind of go and do that a little bit. And it slows down through July and August, September, and then like October, November, back up at it again. Everything's back open. We've got more guys that kind of come back and jump on with us. And yeah, we'll hit it pretty hard until about New Year's. So December stays pretty busy around here. It's pretty mild December. So, we're able to fish pretty hard all through December.
Man, that's great. So you're how many rivers? I think I was looking at your website, and you're on the Tuckasegee, Noontula Creek. Am I pronouncing that right? Noontula?
Yeah, Mm-hmm.
Toccoa River and the Soak River. Or how do you say that?
Yeah, so the Soquee. Yeah. So the Soquee River. Yeah. Which is always an interesting one. That's a very unique thing to North Georgia. You get a lot of mixed opinions on fishing the Soquee River for as far as like, as far as like what I think about it. I think it's really neat. It's very unique because like, if you haven't heard much about it, Soquee, basically there's a lot of private fishing places on it that stock fish and feed fish. So essentially you get this stream that is on the south side of the mountain. So the bottom of it gets very warm. A lot of times it doesn't even hold fish throughout the whole summer, especially in the lower reaches of it. Mm-hmm. But you kind of get this whole stream full of like these like 18 to like 26 inch huge trout through there, and it's just like a river of super trout, and it's a lot of it is because like for years, I mean, since like the 80s and 90s, it's kind of been managed and kind of curated a little bit as this trophy trout fishery down through there, where now you have like all these catch and release trophy trout fishing venues where we can take somebody that has never touched a fly rod in their life and they can go down there and catch like 18-inch to 20-inch trout one after the other on their first time ever fly fishing, so it's cool. It's a fun place to guide, and it's really fun, especially bringing people there that've never been there. Bringing people there that are maybe like new to the sport. It's a lot of fun. It's a great thing to be able to have, especially for like getting folks into the sport, and kind of being able to experience that, to be able to learn a little bit maybe for the first time. So
man, I'm down to catch some 18 to 24-inch trout anytime.
Yeah,
that sounds great.
It's fun. It's a cool place. It's a neat spot. We fish at a couple different like properties up and down through that river, so it's pretty cool.
Nice. Man, as you look back on this journey of Bowman fly fishing, starting as an idea, growing to this place where you got 14 people on roster, 4 people that are kind of full-time for you doing this. And I know it's probably hard to pick one thing, but like, what is one memory that just stands out, or one experience that is just like, man, this was one of the coolest things that has ever happened to me?
Oh man. That's kind of a tough one. I would say probably like one of the coolest would be, there was like this one winter where we really like figured out how to catch big browns out of the Toccoa. And the thing with there was like, on the Toccoa, for the most part, everybody's always agreed that like how you don't fish it on when they're generating. It just doesn't fish good when they're generating. It's really high, really fast. And I kind of like, from those Michigan guys, I'd always heard about like, high water, big streamers, like you can catch big browns. I was like, man, there's nobody really doing that around here at the time. I was like, I think we can figure out how to do this. Like let's go out there and let's just start trying it. And there's like this one winter where we went out, and every time we would go out, if they'd been running water for a couple days and the weather was a little nasty, we would go out there and we would start catching some big fish. We caught that first winter we caught, I think the biggest one we caught is we caught a 27-inch brown out of the Toccoa, but like tons and tons of fish over 18, over 20 inches, just doing different things, that I had never done before. I'm sure there's some guys doing it in the area, that either I didn't know about, or kind of keeping it quiet, but like not really doing it a lot, and then not a lot of people guiding it. And like that was like the first thing I was like, you know what, I think this is good enough. Like I think we can take clients to come do this. I think we can start guiding people like this. And we did, and it was really neat for that first 2 years of really taking people out like in the winter, doing something that was like, is kind of like a passion within a passion. It's like, this is my favorite way to fly fish right now. Like this is what I'm really into, what I really like doing. And being able to bring people and actually seeing it work, is something like different. So that was really cool. That was fun to kind of like have an idea and like kind of develop something and then sort of see it happen and fall into that, that was really cool. I think that, we've had like some cool wins and some cool like stories along the way, as far as like being able to see maybe like when we brought on like when I was able to start bringing like Kyle on. He was our second guy that came on, and was able to have him around more like full time. And we kind of realized, like, I remember like kind of around being like, oh man, like, we've got business now. There's like three of us. We're kind of like coordinating and talking at the end of each day, running around. And that was really neat for me personally, because at that point, it was just had at least felt like it had turned into something different than just me guiding, doing the day to day,
Yeah.
So that was a couple years ago, and I remember kind of like talking with my wife about it and being like, like, oh man, like, like not just fishing anymore, there's a little bit more going on now. So that was that whole year was a really fun year of kind of figuring stuff out and learning new things and kind of change a little bit. So it was a lot of fun.
Man, I love it. I love it. You can clearly hear just the excitement and the passion in your voice for the sport, for the people, and for the community that it produces. So, man, I'm excited to speak to you, get to know you, and man, just to learn a little bit more about you today. So, one more thing before we go, man, if you were talking to someone who maybe they have this dream, they have this passion, whether it's to launch into fly fishing or to just launch into any space in the adventure outfitter space, like, and what's some advice that you could give to them, some encouragement that you could give to them to kind of take those steps?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one of the biggest things is, I remember getting pretty discouraged when I was wanting to start doing this, because I had a lot of people that are like, oh, like, you don't want to start guiding, you don't want to start doing an outfitter, because if you do, you're just going to get burnt out and you're going to lose your love for fly fishing. I remember thinking that and being like, man, I don't really think that's the case, but like, well, I'm going to do it anyway, and kind of getting into it now and having done it for a while and looking back on it, I think that could totally happen if you got into the space, kind of like you were talking about when you guys started doing the rafting. Is like if you enter into guiding of any kind, I don't care what it is. I don't care if you're like starting a if you want to do like put together backpacking trips, rafting, fishing, boating, whatever it is. If you put all your focus on, hey, this activity is my favorite thing, and I want to do this job because I just get to do my activity, and you get frustrated with the fact that you have customers and you get frustrated at your customers, that's how you get burnt out, So like, if you don't enjoy people and if you don't enjoy the relationships or, like having to be around and deal with people, which some people don't, like, some people just aren't wired like that. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's usually, I think, how you get more burnout. I think that my advice would be to never lose sight of the fact that you're providing a service. and you're in the service industry, and therefore your primary objective is to serve people, not necessarily to like see them catch a bunch of fish or just go like surf this one rapid for the long time and have like the most epic trip that you've ever had, go bringing somebody down the river, whatever. Because sometimes like the most lights out fishing trip, like I've had numerous days where you get out there and it's like, I know if I did this, or like, I know if I push these people a little harder, I know if I did this a little bit differently, we could catch some more fish and it might be an epic day. But if I do that, I'm getting away, like I'm going to give them a quality fishing trip. We're going to catch a ton of fish. But it's going to lose. It's not going to be as fun for them, and you got to kind of realize that your primary objective is the people, is your customer, and your secondary objective a lot of times is maybe what they actually signed up for. That being said, though, everybody that's done it knows, like, if you're a fishing guide that catches no fish, after a little while, you won't be you won't be a fishing guide anymore, like, you got to have that. But at the same time too, I think that looking at everybody that I look up to in the space, everybody that I see that's done it for a long time, they enjoy their clients, they enjoy their trips, they don't stay kind of, like I get a kick out of, I don't know if you've seen, there's like the Guide Thoughts Instagram page and stuff like that, something like that. Sure. Yeah, like the funny like meme things that'll kind of poke a little bit about like things that guys do in your boat sometimes or stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, that is funny, and like it's frustrating some days. But if all you ever do is like, and I've seen it so many times with guys who like all they do is they live in this space of like, clients, man, like just can't ever get them to do what they need to do, and it's like, if you're just always in this bitter attitude towards the people that you take fishing, it's like, man, like just why do it, so.
Right. Man, no, I think that's great advice, Daniel. Man, hey, before we hop off here, I mean, how can people come fishing with you? If they're in North Georgia and want to come get on some fish, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, bowmanflyfishing.com. That'd be the best way to do it. Check us out online. Like I said, we've got Carrie now. It's on the phone. Love to talk to you about setting up a trip. We can find us on Instagram and Facebook, both just Bowman Fly Fishing. But yeah, it's kind of our channels there. I always tell everybody, always asks, so I'm going to go ahead and answer too. They ask like, oh man, when should we come up? What's the best time to come? For us, it's like March, April, early May, March, April, early May. I tell everybody come up, and then again in November. And if you're pretty hardcore and you want to throw a big streamer around, come in like January. So if it's snowing and nasty, there's probably gonna be big fish biting. So
yeah, I love it, man. I love it. I'll put a link to all your social channels and your website in the show notes here on this podcast. And man, Daniel, I appreciate your time today, man. Looking forward to and just seeing how you continue to grow. And man, hopefully I can get down to North Georgia sometime soon and do some fishing with you guys.
Yeah, you need to get coming. We need to have you down and come and catch some fish. And man, it's an honor. I really enjoyed it. Glad to be the inaugural podcast here.
The inaugural initial podcaster. Yeah, whatever.
Yes, yeah. Number one. So
number
good.
one.
It's good.
Forever.
I've enjoyed it. Yes, yeah. I'm honored. I will be forever grateful. So.
Oh man, well, Daniel, hey, you take care, and yeah, man, looking forward to seeing where you go from here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you. I'm excited about it, and yeah, appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care.